Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 5. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Game of Thrones. So I have to start with a spoiler warning for Game of Thrones up to Season 8, Episode 5, the penultimate episode of the entire show. If you haven't seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. Okay, I want to structure this review a bit differently than I normally do. I have 4 things that I want to get off my chest first of all, just to make very clear. First thing, after watching this episode. So first thing is I will eat humble pie and admit that I was totally wrong. I've been saying repeatedly for years that Daenerys would not become the villain at the end of this series, that she would not be the Mad Queen. That obviously was wrong. She obviously was very much the Mad Queen and was the villain, at least for this one episode, which is enough for me to say that I was wrong, because I said that she would never become the villain. She obviously was. She obviously did something very wrong. Number 2, I'm not going to try to defend what she did, like last week's episode, that I said if she attacked Cersei, even though Cersei had all the civilians, she had to do it, and I stand by it, that she would be justified, because Cersei, I think she was even right in this episode where she pointed out that Cersei knows exactly how to manipulate her, what to do, and that she's sick of it. But of course, that wasn't the case, because everyone surrendered, and so there's no excuse for her continuing to burn the city after everyone surrendered. So obviously she's portrayed as the Mad Queen. It's totally wrong, villainous, obviously. Number 3 thing I want to mention is, I think it's a very strong possibility, or at least a possibility, that when Dan and Dave wrote Dany to become the Mad Queen, that this is a note that they were given from George R.R. Martin, because we know that he gave them a vague outline for major plot points for the ending, and this is a pretty major plot point. So it seems at least possible that what they did here with Daenerys was taken directly from what George R.R. Martin said. So it's also very possible that what happened here with Daenerys becoming the Mad Queen could also happen in the novels if George ever finishes them. So those 3 things. I think I said 4 things, but I can't think of what the 4th thing could possibly be. Maybe I'll think of it later. But those are the 3 things. Oh yeah, I remember the 4th thing. The 4th thing I wanted to clear up right away is that in the past couple of weeks mainly, I've been seeing a lot of Game of Thrones sucks now, this ending's disappointing, it's horrible, and I kept thinking to myself, it's a bit too early to say that. And how, and I thought it was a bit ridiculous to say that Season 8 was worse than Season 7, because I thought Season 7 was the absolute worst. Couldn't possibly get any worse than the last 3 episodes of Season 7. And especially the past week, I've been seeing YouTube videos pop up everywhere saying Game of Thrones sucks now, it's disappointing, the ending's gonna suck, like video essays. And every time I saw a video like that, I just thought to myself, well, it's a bit too, this show's not even over yet. Like, how can you come to this conclusion when we still have 2 episodes yet? You don't even know what the ending is going to be. Like, I already had, these videos that I saw saying, oh, this is how Game of Thrones should have ended. How can you say that if it hasn't even ended yet? How can you say it should have ended? And the thing with, episode 3, people were crying foul, saying this is a horrible ending to the White Walkers. It sucks that this is all we get from the White Walkers. And I kept saying, look, I'm going to reserve judgment to say until I see the last 3 episodes before I'm willing to say there's a horrible ending or not. So the 4th thing that I want to make clear is, after watching this episode, even though we still have 1 episode left, I am now ready to say yes, Season 8 sucks. It's a total disappointment. What they did with episode 3 sucked. It sucked that they didn't tie the White Walkers into the ending. It sucked that that's all they got. And it sucked that this is what it's building up to. So I am now willing to go with everyone else who said that Game of Thrones had a very disappointing ending, and that there's no way the final episode can recover after this shit show. And I will probably retroactively say that the whole season sucked. I'm no longer going to think highly of episode 3. It remains to be seen if I'm going to say it's worse than the ending of season 7. I think you'll have to wait to see the last episode before I make that determination. I mean, you could argue it's worse just by default, just because this is the ending, and season 7 wasn't the ending of the show. But the shittiness and the writing definitely started in season 7. So when I clarified that I was wrong, that Daenerys is the Mad King, and that it's a possibility that George R. R. Martin will do the same thing in the novels, the caveat to that is that if George R. R. Martin does do the same thing in novels, which is a strong possibility, I think he'd do a much, much better job than Dan and Dave did. I think the job that Dan and Dave did sucked. I would say that the way Daenerys behaved in this episode is out of character for her. I think it was done solely to create this conflict, convenience sort of thing. And just, I saw this, what they were doing with their character in the previous episode, and I should have realized that they were building towards this, because having her look all nervous and like chewing her fingernails and like, John, you're going to disappoint me, blah, blah, blah. And the way that she was behaving and the start of this episode they were definitely building her towards someone who's delving into madness. Someone else, this person's going to go insane. And that start of the episode definitely had that feeling towards it. And so when she does go insane and kill a lot of people, you're supposed to go, oh, see, this makes sense. It's foreshadowed because they started building this all up. But I'm going to fight against that. I don't think it makes sense from the way she behaved in the earlier season, because she even said, like, at the start of this episode, we value mercy, and we're going to give people mercy by making sure future generations don't have to suffer tyrants. So why in the hell did she murder a bunch of innocent people when it wasn't even necessary? She had already won. And I know what the reasoning to this is going to be. Well, she just went mad with power, and Targaryens are mad. See, this is why I never liked the Mad Queen theory in the first place. And I'm saying, it definitely is the case in the show, and it still could be the case in the book. But here's my issue with it. It pertains to heritage, like the sins of the fathers had to suck the funds. So since everyone brought up this theory because her father was the Mad King, but his father apparently was a pretty good guy. And if you go down the line of Targaryens, I haven't read the Fire and Blood book, but you could. There was a couple of evil, like something the cruel, evil bastards in there, but there were a couple of really nice, benevolent, good rulers in that line as well. So to assume that every time that just because her father was a Mad King, that means that she has to be as well, that's faulty logic, and that's kind of irritates me that they actually decided to go with that. And I do have faith that if George R. R. Martin did do the same thing, that he would do a much better job at making it believable, because I think what the show did, and it's obviously like you had the previously on where they played the sound bites of every time a Targaryen's born, you flip a coin if they go mad, and the sound bites of like Barristan say, oh, don't be a benevolent queen or whatever, and don't be evil. Like, it was kind of obvious. Like, as soon as I saw that, I knew they were like foreshadowing something bad. Now let me clarify what I mean, because I'm not saying that Daenerys is perfect and lovely, and what I wanted to happen was for her to sit on the throne and be like, I love you all, I'm the rightful queen, everyone's going to bow to her feet. In fact, I specifically did not want that. What I did want was for her to do something that some could perceive as being mad or evil, but not really. She had her reasons. For example, if she had killed the people of King's Landing, but they hadn't won, like she needed to do that in order to defeat Cersei, then that could be open to interpretation. Some people could say, okay, she had to do that to win. Other people say she's evil for killing all these people. That would be a good ending, in my opinion. That would be, and then it would create conflict between Jon and Dany, and I've said before when I did my discussion video with my brother the previous week that a perfect endings for me would have Cersei, Jon, and Daenerys all dead. None of them sitting on the throne, even Daenerys, because I do think, even though they were being a bit artificial with making her go mad, I do think it was obvious that she was a bit too power hungry and that she wouldn't be a good ruler, and so that she needed to die as well. So just to be clear, I did not want her to be queen. I didn't think she was perfect, and I saw faults in her. But I think what they did with her in this episode was just too much. It wasn't earned. If they want to make her to the Mad Queen to a certain extent, I'd be perfectly. Actually, in fact, not only would I be happy, would I be fine with it, I would actually want them to do that. To me, that would seem like a very interesting ending. What they did here, and I watched like the Geek Satters podcast, friends of mine I've done live videos with before, and they said that they feel like this, after last week's episode, they said they felt like the show was just giving in to the fan theories that Daenerys would be the Mad Queen, even though it didn't really work. And I can't really say that I disagree with that assessment, even if you say, well, George told them this and that's why they did it. That may be true. I'm willing to concede that. But even if that's the case, I kind of see like they have a point. Because everyone had the theory that she'd go mad, so they had to play it out, and I don't think it quite worked at all. Now, okay, so let me get into this episode proper, and I guess we'll start out with the killing of Varys. I think this is a missed opportunity. I think Varys was. Me and my brother talked about last week how Varys is just sitting on the sidelines doing nothing for most of season 6, 7, and 8. And now we had a chance. Last week we saw him, his true colors, him being the Varys. And I love this week we actually saw him with a little bird. It showed that he actually had little birds. But then again, like, I think about it, the more I hate last week's episode, because if Varys was truly a master of whispers, he would be able to tell that Euron was lying in wait for them with the scorpions, whatever. But anyway, so I think this is a huge failed opportunity to just kill him off like this. Now, and it's also very disappointing that, we see him with a little girl and he's like, give this information to someone, but that information obviously doesn't do any good, because as far as I know, the little girl dies or in King's Landing's destroyed anyway. But, I think it's still possible, because we saw him writing letters, that some of his letters he wrote did get out into the right hands, and that it will have an impact in the next episode. So I will say that's possible. But even so, I think they could have done a much better job at Varys being Varys again, rather than just killing him off like that. And the whole scene, again, I'm just going to harp on this over and over again, like the way Daenerys was behaving in that scene, and she was, I'm evil, blah, blah. And the way she was like with Jon afterwards, and Jon tried to talk to her, and Jon was pulling away, he didn't want to make out with her because they're related, and she's like, oh, I see, I'm not alone. That's how they left it. Like, it's so contrived, like the way they're trying to push it for, oh, now all of a sudden she's alone, no one's helping her. And I just don't think, again, let me clarify, like there's ways you could have her be the Mad Queen and it makes sense and work for the character. This was not one of them. Sorry, but it just was not. It was very sudden and contrived, and didn't work. So, God damn it. So what else happened in this episode? Yeah, I might just jump around a bit because most of the stuff I want to talk about happened towards the end. I'm not going to go scene by scene to talk about the beginning, which, in my opinion, did drag a little bit. Let's get right into Clegane Bowl. Oh, Clegane Bowl. Get hype, get hype, get hype. It's so obvious. Like, one thing I will say about this entire episode, though, is that it was shot so beautifully. And again, this is Miguel Sapochnik, who's an excellent director. At least this time, rather than the last episode directed, at least you could actually see it. So it was beautiful. The shots were absolutely beautiful, like especially from the ground up of the dragon fire destroying everything. And the Clegane Bowl, I would say, is another example. It was a very beautiful shot. But it was so contrived. Like I was been saying this forever. Like, the Hound's like, oh, I've been wanting to kill my brothers since I was born. I'm like, you have? Really? I don't know. And just the whole thing about, I don't know. I didn't find the Game Bowl satisfying at all. And mainly because it was so, built up to for so long. And the fact it was obvious they were trying their hardest to make it epic by having them fight on the staircase and the walls falling and there's dragon fire in the background. Look at how epic this epic Game Bowl battle is. And yawn. And plus I'll say, the moment before where the Hound and Arya are there, and he tells her to go back, and she's like, no, I gotta kill Cersei, and he's like, no, blah blah, you gotta listen, you're gonna die if you do it, and she's like, okay, thank you, Sandor, and she runs off. I didn't buy that for Arya's character, not in the slightest bit. That reeked so much reeking, stunk out the room of plot convenience. The whole room stunk of plot convenience after I watched that scene. That scene was so contrived. I can't. And it's obvious because they didn't want Arya to go try to kill Cersei. They wanted her to run back out of the city so they could follow her and give the bird's eye view, like Dan and Dave suddenly after the episode. They're like, oh, we have to have a character you care about being in the carnage, otherwise you don't care about the carnage. Why Dan and Dave sound like William Shatner all of a sudden? I don't know. But anyway, no. Just no. Okay, and let me talk about, again, I'm just jumping around, I'm not going in order here. Let me talk about Jaime Lannister and fucking Euron. Do I need to say more than that? I think that kind of covers how I feel about the Jaime Lannister versus Euron fight. Yeah, I think that about covers it. This... Why is Euron trying to kill Jaime? And why is he, when he was, after he died and he was lying on his deathbed, he's like, I'm the one that killed Jaime Lannister. They really fucked up when writing this character. Damn it. Okay. Alright, so, the dragon... again, I will say, the shots of the battle scenes were beautiful. This was a beautifully shot, beautifully directed, beautiful cinematography. The dragon, lighting all the scorpions on fire. I gotta say, I love that. But it's kind of inconsistent of why, how easy it was to kill Rhaegal with the scorpions to how difficult it was to hit, how Drogon was able. The scorpions were it didn't even matter. He got rid of them so easily. Now, I know the logic here. Logic here is when they killed Rhaegal, it was a surprise attack. They had no idea where they were unprepared. They just popped up out of nowhere, and Euron went, ha! Popped up out of nowhere, even though they should have been able to clearly see him from their vantage point. And if Varys was Master of Whispers worth a damn, he would have been able to know that was going to happen anyway. But, yeah. Leaving all that aside, the logic here is that there was a surprise sneak attack, and so they weren't prepared for that, so that's why it was so easy to kill Rhaegal. But this time, they knew about the scorpions, they knew where they were, so Drogon was able to maneuver more to avoid them. But even not that last time, like, even after they killed Rhaegal and they knew about the scorpions, when Drogon flew towards Euron, like, they had to turn around because, Daenerys eventually turned around because she knew that she would just get killed. And Drogon couldn't deal with all those scorpions. There were way more scorpions this time. And somehow they didn't matter, weren't a threat at all. And like that scene when Drogon was on the castle walls, like weighing lace to the fucking scorpions. Like, how come the scorpions at the other angle weren't shooting at Drogon? That's why you have all the scorpions lined up like that. So if one is attacked, the others can kill him. Why weren't they killing him while he was busy taking out? So first off, the scorpions killed Rhaegal too easily. They were too ineffective. They were too effective. And then secondly, the scorpions all of a sudden went from being so powerful and effective to being completely useless and ineffective. This I do not buy. I do not buy. I will say they were actually absolutely beautiful shot, but I did not buy that in the least. But there were some things I did really like about this episode, like when Drogon came from behind, like when they had the Golden Company, and Drogon came from behind and just blew the fire and fucked the whole Golden Company up, and they just killed the Harry Strickland. I actually like that. I have a feeling some people might complain that the Golden Company had a lot of build up and they ended up just being killed immediately, but I actually think that's fitting. I think that works because I think that shows that Cersei was thinking that she had this advantage by getting the Golden Company, but it turned out to mean jack shit. I actually kind of like that aspect of it. And it's I do. I'm trying to think of a specific example of this, but when you think of something that's going to be so badass, and you build up, and it just ends up being nothing. I don't know. I actually like that in this particular case. Alright, I gotta edit this in because I just thought of what this scene reminds me of. It reminds me of like MacGruber when he got all those people together and they're showing up how badass they are, and then like, look at this badass and that badass, and they all get in a van, he blows it up and they all die. And so they're setting up like this awesome team that just die immediately. And the same thing in Deadpool 2 pulled the same gag where he's like, we're getting together X-Force, and they get together all these superheroes and they all just die when they're trying to go skydiving. That's what this reminded me of, and I actually kind of liked it, if I'm being honest, even if it was kind of goofy, but I don't know, I thought it kind of worked. Alright, so I'm sorry, my mind's jumping, so I'm just going to jump around here a bit. So the mountain smashes Qyburn's head against the wall. I don't know. There's too much of a Frankenstein analogy here that the Frankenstein's own creation kills him. And why would the Franken Mountain even be like so? He's also like, because he's established that like his whole purpose in life was to serve Cersei, but because his brother comes and wants to kill him, he is willing to disregard her and also kill his own creator. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, but and plus, like, the Franken Mountain, like, he was like first introduced in, what was it, season 6, and he hasn't, no, season 5. at the end of season 5. And he hasn't really done anything worthwhile the whole entire time. Like, he ripped open the head of like some of those stupid sparrows, which I gotta admit that was really cool. I did like that. And he tortured the Shame woman. But other than that, like, he didn't do anything. He just stood there looking scary. And then he finally, fights his brother, and then his brother kills himself to kill him. Like, I think I'd be invested in this fight scene more if the Mountain actually fucking did anything this entire time he's been around. He hasn't really done anything since season 6, since he ripped off the heads of the sparrows. He just stood around and looked pretty much. Alright. So yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Jaime and Cersei. So Jaime and Cersei, actually, I don't know. Like, I was saying in my previous video that I was hoping that Jaime was going to kill Cersei, and everyone was predicting that. I think I said if the show wasn't trying to shock people and would actually do something good, that would have Jaime kill Cersei in order to save people. And yeah, no, they didn't want to do that. Instead, they just wanted Jaime to actually be in love with Cersei, and that he was willing to die with her or die for her. And I think that is a bad end to his character. I mean, I suppose, like, I heard some people having issues with him ending up with Brienne, saying, oh, that's not really him. But I actually think that would have made sense for his character journey. I think that would have been the ultimate casting Cersei aside. I think killing Cersei and dying to kill her would have been the ultimate end for his character. Trying to save her and dying in her arms, I mean, I can see it, but I don't think that's a very good character journey from a storytelling standpoint. And, I don't know. You have to remember that the Valonqar prophecy was not in the show. So, and I've been saying this for a long time, because I hear a lot of reviewers bringing up the Valonqar prophecy as pertaining to the show, but I keep having to, I keep thinking, no, they're forgetting that it's not in the show. So the show is under no obligation to stay true to that prophecy. And so it doesn't bother me that much that they didn't, because the show specifically didn't mention it. So that made me think that they probably knew all along that they weren't going to stay true to it, which is why they didn't mention it. So I don't have an issue with that. I think the scene was kind of powerful, with Cersei crying and saying she wanted her son to live and she didn't want to die, but Jaime kind of knew they were going to die. So yeah, I mean, that wasn't a bad scene. That was an interesting scene. All right. Okay, so let's talk about Jon Snow. I don't know, they didn't just make Daenerys the Mad Queen, they made Grey Worm an asshole, and I suppose their reasoning for that is, he saw Missandei die, and it kind of when Daenerys gave, that thing, collar or whatever, said this is all Missandei had, and he just threw it in the fire. It was showing that he's becoming mad because they killed his lover. And they had this thing when Drogon started, Daenerys started attacking the city even after they surrendered, and so Grey Worm's like, okay, we gotta kill everyone. They took his cue, and he saw Jon Snow was trying to hold his troops back and be like, no, don't attack. He was looking at him, giving him a nasty stink eye, being pissed off, saying, what the fuck, and I bet you next week they're gonna say he's a traitor because he didn't want to kill a bunch of civilians. I don't like that. What they're doing for Grey Worm's character either. I mean, I don't want to argue about whether or not it fits with his character, whether he would do it, because he's so grief-ridden about Missandei or not. I don't care. I just don't think that's a good. I don't care if it's natural or not. I don't care if it makes sense. I just don't think that's a good character journey for Grey Worm. Not really what I want to see. And I did find the stuff with Jon a bit interesting, though, how he was, trying to keep his own troops back. When he saw one of his own troops trying to rape a woman, he killed him. So I thought that was good for Jon. Now, let me talk a bit about Arya. So after the contrived moment where she ran back, they had her, trying to save people. This woman saved her life, and so she tried to save her back, and she ended up getting her killed, ended up getting everyone killed around her. There was carnage everywhere. And again, I want to emphasize that these scenes, the way the cinematography in these shots were amazing. They were absolutely beautiful. But it's to me, it's so obvious what they're setting up here. Now, I gotta admit, when I was doing a discussion video with my brother last week, he talked about a theory that Arya was going down to King's Landing to kill Daenerys, and me and him both agreed that that theory was ridiculous and without any merit. And I stand by that. Because she wasn't. She was actually going there to kill Cersei, and they stayed true with that. But to me, it's quite obvious what they're setting up here, because in the after the episode, they said, "Oh, we need a figure of perspective to follow the carnage." But that's not the only reason they chose Arya to do it. They also chose Arya to do it because so she would have a reason to want to kill Daenerys. So to me, it's obvious that they're setting up Arya to kill Daenerys. And I mean, at this stage, I kind of want to see it happen, but as I said, the show already sucks, so there's no way any ending that could make it not suck. So I don't really care. But I would like it. I am gonna watch this last episode, of course, and so if they have already killed Jon, that's fine. If they have aliens come from space and proclaim everything was all a dream, I mean, that'd be fine too at this stage. At this stage, I don't really care. But yeah, so it's obvious to me that what they're driving towards is that Arya's going to kill Daenerys, and Jon's going to be the king. He's going to be the benevolent ruler and rule happily ever after, and everyone's going to be happy going back to Jon being King Aegon Targaryen. And I will go on record saying that if that is the ending, then that ending will suck balls. So I'm kind of expecting it to be the ending after this episode, because it does seem that's what they're driving towards. I think that would be stupid. I think a better ending to me is if Jon dies, Daenerys dies, and there's no ruler, there's no Seven Kingdom, and they kind of form a democracy or a union of alliance of the 7 different kingdoms, rather than having a king ruling them all. Because it seems to me that's what the show is building towards. The show is building towards whoever sits on the throne is going to be a tyrant. Daenerys keeps saying that I need to get rid of tyrants, but she made it clear in this episode that she is a tyrant, so she's no good. So if they're building towards no one sitting on the throne, because it doesn't matter who does, it's not going to be a good thing, then I will find that a good ending, regardless. Even though I still hate this episode, but I will find that a good ending. I'll still find this how they got to it incredibly contrived and not very well written, but I will find that a good ending. But if they're leaning towards Jon sitting on the throne and being the benevolent king, the true hero happily ever after, then that will suck, because that kind of goes against what they're saying. And also, how come if Targaryens are mad all the time, how come this is fine, let's go back to a Targaryen being in charge, because that's what Jon is. So I wouldn't like that ending, to be perfectly honest with you. Alright, so I can't think of anything else to talk about with this episode, so let's just go ahead and give my rating out of 10 for this episode, and very close to giving this a 3, but I think I'm actually going to give this a 4, poor, because I had to push it up at least one notch because of the cinematography, because of how beautiful it's shot, how good the editing, the production value in this episode was amazing, and I do have to say it was really cool seeing. I was so into this episode until they had Dany turn into the Mad Queen. when Drogon was like lighting the freaking things on fire, like that was awesome. Like I was really into this, and even afterwards, like Game Ball, as dumb as it was shot really nice and beautifully, and like the cinematography is just amazing. So I feel like I need to acknowledge that, so I'm gonna raise my rating from a 3 to a 4. But I'm still giving a negative rating overall, a 4 poor. Anything 6 below for me means that I did not like the episode. 5 means like, okay, I kind of liked it, but just leaning towards not liking it. But a 4 is saying, yeah, I clearly did not like this episode. So yeah, so wait to see how next week's goes, and wait for the George to write the books if he ever does, and wait for the Long Night prequel series, which hopefully will be better than this show. Anyway, that is it for my review of Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 5. I will be doing a live discussion video this week with my brother Apkin Tomko. This will be on my channel Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Pacific Time in the U.S. So I'll put a link to that video in the description below, so be sure to check that out. Also check out my channel. They do many more videos and other shows like Star Trek, Lost, The Expanse, and more, so be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. Thanks a lot for watching.